David Gillig, can you hear me?
Yes, I can. Who is this?
Okay, this is Castillo.
Oh,
Can
yeah.
I share my screen for a moment just to test it?
Sure. Hang on just a second.
Thank you.
Okay, there you go.
You can't see my screen, right?
Let me see. Hang on. I don't think so. No.
Okay, I don't think it's allowing me to share. Unless I'm doing something on my end.
Let me try mine again and then clear out of it again. So hang on a second.
Okay.
Okay, stop. Okay, now try it and see.
Okay. Yeah, I see it on my screen, but I don't believe it's popping up.
Yeah, because I don't see anything. From you at all.
Let me try something different. Yeah, it's asking me which screen do I want to share. And I'm clicking it, but it's not doing anything.
And you're using the Adobe file?
No, let me do that. Okay, I'm gonna go back out. Let me
Hi, John. Hi, Will.
Hey, guy.
Hey, David.
Not good.
Perfect.
You can hear us?
We can see you. We can hear you. You're good to go.
Thank you.
Thank you, Will.
David,
Yeah, John.
I heard the guy in the neighborhood who was leading the group in opposition passed away.
Yes. I believe his name was Duff. And he passed away suddenly. I'm not sure what happened, but I'm sure someone will be able to explain that at the start of the meeting for you.
Apparently it was cancer. They had about a month's notice, stage 4. So it was sudden, but not without enough time to have figured something out. That's our understanding from one of the other residents on the site.
For who to have figured something out?
The other people, they've been opposing the project for 2 years. So they've been well organized for a while.
David, do we have a quorum on the call already?
No, we do not.
Okay. I didn't want us to get too far in that conversation without the meeting starting.
Oh, the guy's dead. I hear you, boss.
Castillo, did you get your screen share to work? Antonio?
Hey, David. I just want to make sure you guys can hear me.
Hi, Stacy.
Hi.
I can hear you and see you.
Great. Thank
You're
you.
good. You're welcome.
Hello, Stacy.
Oh, everyone. I'm so happy to see your face, Joan Altschul. And I hope to see everyone else's face. And I'm going to turn well, I'll just keep it on. Whatever.
Can people hear and see me?
Yes.
All right, great.
Hi, John. Yes, we can hear and see you. Hi, Sue. You're muted, Sue. Unmute
David,
yourself.
this is Tony again. Can you hear me?
Yes.
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 Okay, I'm gonna try to share my screen again.
Okay.
I wasn't successful the first time for some reason.
Okay. Sue, can you say hi for a second? I want to make sure I can hear you. Unmute yourself.
Hello.
Okay, Sue, you're good.
Okay. Hi, everybody.
Hello,
Hi,
Sue.
Stacy. Haven't seen you in a long time. How are you?
Good. How are you?
Hi.
Tony, you're flashy.
John. Hi, Jen.
Thank you for dropping off that.
Adam. Okay, I'm gonna turn off my phone.
Okay, Antonia, we could see this screen share for a moment, but it kept flashing. So the
Okay,
screen share was working.
that
So
was the Adobe version.
oh, okay. So I have a feeling it's something on your end because it was, we could see it, but it was just flashing.
Tony, if you want to send it to
Okay.
me, I might be able to share if it's not working on yours.
Yeah, something is not working here. David, I'm gonna try sharing one more time here.
Okay. Okay, so
You see
far
that?
so far so good. Yeah, make it like a full screen and see.
Yeah, I have it full screen. For some reason, it's stuck.
Maybe hide the screen sharing thing. Okay.
Hmm.
Oh, perfect.
So just go to date modified, the very top one is PDF,
Date modified.
the most recent.
The most, oh, the top.
Yeah,
Okay.
just hit that tab,
Okay.
date modified.
So I got this a backup just in case. Yeah.
So I'm gonna log on to Zoom.
Okay.
I launch my show, but I don't share until I'm called.
Right, exactly. Yeah.
David, are you there? Is there someone listening?
I am here, Sue. Yes.
Hi, David. It's Genevieve Morrill.
Oh, hi, Genevieve.
I was trying to find out if the Palm project was on tonight, and I needed to speak if it was.
It is on the agenda. Okay. And I will put you on the speaker list if it goes forward.
Okay, great. Thank you so much, David.
Sure, you're welcome, Genevieve. Good to hear you.
Thank you. You too. Be well.
Thanks.
David, is everyone here?
I believe everybody is here. If we can get the commissioners on camera.
I don't see Lynn. Is she there?
Lynn did sign in earlier. I saw her.
She's here. I can see her. Hi, Lynn.
I don't see Erickson either.
I'm here.
You have to
John,
scroll over on the top. John's here too.
John's here too, yeah.
What about Rogerio?
Rogerio is here.
I don't see him.
Keeps surprising us by shaving, and I don't know who it is.
Oh.
Then David, whenever you're ready, we can get started.
Okay, I'm ready on my end. Everything is live feed. We are live on YouTube tonight, as well as the cable channels. So we are good to go. So whenever you'd like to start, you can go.
Let's get started then. We're going to start with the, I'd like to call the meeting to order of the Planning Commission of the City of West Hollywood. And we will start our meeting with the Pledge of Allegiance. For the Pledge of Allegiance, I've asked our Vice Chair, John Erickson, to lead the pledge. I'd ask everyone else to mute so we can actually hear it, and place your hand over your heart as he leads us.
All right, here we go. I pledge allegiance to the flag of the United States of America and to the republic for which it stands, one nation, indivisible, with liberty and justice for all.
Thank you very much. David, can you call the roll, please?
Good evening. Commissioner Jones,
Here.
Commissioner Hoopengarner,
Here.
Commissioner Carvalero,
Here.
Commissioner Buckner,
Here.
Commissioner Elchel,
Here.
Vice Chair Erickson,
Here.
and Chair Bass,
I'm here.
and we have a quorum.
Thank you very much. The next item on our agenda, item number 5 is, item number 4 is approval of the agenda. We have a couple of things to note here. First of all, item 10A is being continued with the approval of this agenda. And I'm going to request that the commission move item 11C before 11A and B, because we have a commissioner who has to recuse for A and B. So if we could make that move. And I know there's been a request to continue item 10B, and we will discuss whether to continue that or not when we get to that item. Are there any other changes to the agenda? Then do we have a motion to approve?
I'll move.
I'll second.
David, can you please call the roll?
Thank you. Commissioner Jones,
Yes.
Commissioner Hoopengarner,
Aye.
Commissioner Carvalero,
Yes.
Commissioner Buckner,
Yes.
Commissioner Elchel,
Yes.
Vice Chair Erickson,
Yes.
Chair Bass,
Yes.
and the agenda is approved as amended.
Thank you very much. The next item is the approval of the minutes, number 5 from August 6, 2020. I know David has one change to read into the record, and I see Sue waving for.
Yeah, yes, I was not at that meeting, so I'll abstain from the motion to approve or whatever. Thank you.
Thank you. That is noted. Yes, staff has one correction on page 6 of 8 under the new business item for the climate action adaptation plan for the subcommittee appointments. I accidentally in error stated John Erickson as an alternate, and he is not an alternate. We have two primaries, Lynn Hoopengarner and John Erickson. So that will be noted on the minutes as amended. And that's all staff has.
Any other changes or a motion to approve?
So moved.
Is there a second?
Second.
Thank you.
Okay. Commissioner Elchel,
Yes.
Commissioner Buckner,
Abstaining.
you'll be abstaining.
Yes.
Commissioner Carvalero,
Yes.
Commissioner Hoopengarner,
Yes.
Commissioner Jones,
Yes.
Vice Chair Erickson,
Yes.
Chair Bass,
Yes.
and the minutes for August 6th, 2020 are approved as amended, noting Commissioner Buckner abstaining.
Thank you. Next item on our agenda is public comment, and this is an area reserved for people to speak to items before the Planning Commission. David, do we have any public speakers?
I do not have any public speakers for this item. I have several for the public hearing for item 10B, but nothing at this time for this one.
Okay. If there is anyone on this call that was hoping to speak during public comment that has not already reached out to our secretary, can you please state that now? So hearing none, we will move on to item number 7, which is our director's report. Mr. Kehoe.
Good evening, Chair and members of the Commission. It's been kind of a light agenda at the City Council when it comes to planning and development items, so I don't really have anything to announce today.
Great, thank you. Do any of the commissioners have questions for our director? Then we will move on to item number 8, which is items from commissioners. I'm just going to call on you so that we are not all speaking at once in the order you're on my screen. So Commissioner Jones.
Hi, it's great to see everyone vote. That's all I have. Thanks.
Thank you. Commissioner Altschul.
Nothing, thank you. I voted Stacy.
Commissioner Hoopengarter.
Voting is done.
Commissioner Buckner.
Yes, I voted, and I've been checking, and they've accepted my ballot, so I'm all there. Can't wait till it's over so we know. Thank you, everybody, for voting, all public and everybody else. Please vote.
Commissioner Cavallero.
It's good to see everybody, and I voted also. I haven't checked, but I will check tomorrow now. Yeah, nothing further.
Vice Chair Erickson.
I hear there's an election occurring sometime soon, so I hope everyone does vote. I am probably the lone one. I have not yet voted. I am not in the mental headspace to fill out my ballot in the way in which I'm on the ballot. So I need to get there. So, but I'm really loving seeing everyone over on the east side and around the city actually go to the poll box drop locations and take photos. I mean, I think I see a selfie being taken at Plummer Park like every 10 seconds. So it's really great to see how many people are so excited to vote. Vote this monster at the White House. I'll be very specific, out of office, and hopefully bring in some better times.
Thank you. I'm one of those people who did take a selfie at Plummer Park. I voted and got the text message last night that my ballot had been counted. So I encourage, as my colleagues did, I encourage everyone else to make sure they vote and vote early. So,
and Chair, if people see me eating ice chips, I had to have a tooth extracted yesterday, which is something that we all look forward to doing, of course. So if my mouth is slurred or anything like that, I apologize, and I'm happy to repeat myself. But anyways, I just wanted to make sure the public and everyone was aware of that.
Thank you. Our next item is number 9, consent calendar, and we have none. So we will move on to public hearings. And we continued the item 10A when we approved the agenda of 8743 Sunset Boulevard. So we will hear that on Thursday, November 5th, our next meeting. And so the next item is item 10B. And before we go to a staff report, I wanted to check in with the commission. I don't want to get into any deliberation on the item itself, but there has been a request for a continuance. And so before we opened this public hearing, I would like to poll the commission and see where we are on that, whether we would like to continue it or would like to hear this item tonight. Commissioner Buckner.
Is it appropriate, Adam, to say why they need a continuance if it's a reason that is appropriate?
Absolutely. So I don't want to speak on anyone's behalf, but so the public knows, we received letters saying that one of the lead organizers in the neighborhood who many folks have been relying on passed away suddenly on Monday night, I believe Monday night. And so they're asking just for a continuance to gather the neighborhood group, as I understand it. And I do understand that the applicant opposes this continuation. That's why I wanted to check with the commission before we open the public hearing. Commissioner Buckner, please.
Just one more thing. Jennifer, do you have anything to add that might be helpful with regard to this request?
No, it's entirely up to the commission whether it wants to continue the item or not. We don't have a formal position on it. We're ready to go with the staff report, but we understand if the commission votes to push it off.
Commissioner Hoopengarter.
Yes, if we were to vote to continue this, does the calendar provide for the opportunity to do it to a date certain and move it to the immediate next meeting?
Yes, I actually would recommend putting it on November 19th. The November 5th meeting is pretty full already. We're moving one item already to that night. So November 19th would be a good date for it.
But we could do date certain.
Commissioner Caballero.
Question for Jennifer. Jennifer, has this group presented to the applicant and the architect previously, or will this be the first time that they have a chance to voice their opinions?
To the applicant, has the opposition group spoken to the applicant? Is that your question?
Has this neighborhood group presented their issues, questions, concerns about this project to the applicant in the past? Or would this be their only opportunity and first opportunity?
This would be their first and only opportunity to present their position to the Planning Commission in a public hearing. But it's not I don't think it's the first time that the applicant has heard what they have to say. But I don't know what they're going to say, so it would be just me guessing.
There was no neighborhood meeting, was there?
There was a neighborhood meeting. It was when this project first came in, I believe in 2016 or 2017. It's also gone to Historic Preservation Commission twice and Design Review Subcommittee.
Anyone else have an opinion on what we should do here? Should we
grant the continuance? I think had the applicant's representative gotten hit by a bus, they would have wished a continuance, and I think it should go both ways.
I'm also inclined to support the continuance. I think it's the right thing to do personally. I can only imagine by the number of emails and messages that we've received on this project, what it's like to lose a leader in Duff Bennett. And so I want to be respectful of all of that work. And I'm happy to support a continuance at this time, should the commission want to move in that direction.
To Mr. Altschul's point, that in fact, this needs to be, let's quote, fair and balanced. And should something have happened to the applicant, we would of course probably grant a continuance. And as such, the community should be afforded the same courtesy, in my opinion. So as much as this is incredibly inconvenient, I would make a motion to continue this to a date certain per staff's recommendation, and apologize to all parties, but think that that would be the proper way to go.
I'll second.
So there's a motion to continue this item to a date certain of November 19th. Commissioner Jones, you didn't say anything previous. Do you have anything to add?
I mean, the only thing that I'd like to add is that I would assume, and there were a number of letters that were submitted also in support of this project. And I really want to also be mindful of all of the people who took time out of their schedules to write those in tonight to come to this meeting, to whether it's to voice support or other people who aren't part of the coalition. Obviously, my heart goes out to people who have lost Duff, but I also want to make sure that I'm giving voice to people who took time out of their schedules to be here this evening for who weren't affiliated with them. So I just want to make sure we're considering all of the parties here, and that's all I have.
Commissioner Buckner?
Yes, I don't really oppose the continuance. However, I do feel that there's been a tremendous amount of activity and interest in this project. And I agree with Stacy that people that have sent letters, and numerous letters and emails and gatherings and so forth. So I just feel that on the side of balance, I would vote in favor of the continuance, but I think that I just want people to know that we're cognizant of their participation, and I know it's an inconvenience.
And an inconvenience to the developer, obviously.
Absolutely. Thank you for that.
Inconvenience to the poor guy who passed away.
Yes.
I would echo some of those same thoughts that Commissioner Buckner and Commissioner Jones just said, in that a lot of people have reached out on this project. One of the largest public inputs of a project I've seen in the last 4 years. And I want to acknowledge and let people know that if their comments are included in the packet tonight that we received, that all of that will continue and we will still have all of that information for our deliberation on the 19th, and it will all be considered for and against the project. Commission, that
Just want to add to what you're saying. Excuse me,
Please,
I didn't mean to
Yeah.
talk over you. In addition, if there are people who are listening in or who want to add to what is part of our packet for the next, for the November 19th meeting, they can still send in their letters and emails and so forth. Is that correct?
Yes. And I would also say that for those people who are here tonight and went out of their way to attend this meeting via Zoom, and if they can't attend on the 19th, I feel bad about that, but please write to us and let us know your thoughts. But one of the reasons we would continue this before hearing the item is it puts us and our attorney could probably speak to this much better than I could, but it puts us in a very difficult position. If we hear comment on it and then continue it, it makes it really difficult for the city. So hearing all of the public speakers at the same time on the 19th, and getting all of those comments at the same time just makes it a lot cleaner and straightforward process for everybody. So hearing a motion and not seeing anyone else's hand raised, I'd ask David to call the roll on continuing this item to a date certain of November 19th.
Commissioner Hoopengarner,
Yes.
Commissioner Elchel,
Yes.
Commissioner Jones,
Yes.
Commissioner Buckner,
Yes.
Commissioner Carvalero,
Yes.
Vice Chair Erickson,
Yes.
Chair Bass,
Yes.
and the motion is approved unanimously. This item will be continued to Thursday, November 19th, 2020.
Thank you very much. And if anybody is still on this call that really needs to speak to us, there's a public comment period at the end of this meeting, and we'd be happy to hear those comments at that time as well. So moving forward on our agenda to new business, we moved item 11C, the Urban Design and Architecture Information Session, getting tongue-tied tonight, I apologize. We moved that to the first item here, and I would just, because of the setting on Zoom here, I am going to ask commissioners, if at all possible, to hold all of the questions until staff asks us for questions, so we're not constantly interrupting. I just think that would be a much more productive way to have this information session. I hope that works for staff as well, but they'll give us opportunities to ask questions. And so please take vigorous notes of all of the questions you might have for when this is done. And so I believe I will turn this over now, I believe, to Rick Abramson.
Okay, thank you, Chair. Let me see if I can get this. All right, so is my screen visible?
Not yet.
I'm seeing some yes and some no.
Rick, does it say Urban Design and Architecture Studio Information Session? Is
Yes,
that what it says? Yes,
that's
we
the
can see it.
Yes.
Okay. Commissioner Buckner, you can see it as well?
Yes.
Okay, wonderful.
I can't see it.
Commissioner Altschul, you can't see the screen.
You sure?
I think so.
It's just lettering. There's nothing else on it.
Oh, I see the lettering.
Okay.
Okay, wonderful.
I don't see Rick.
No, it'll just be the presentation. Yes. Okay, well, thank you, Chair Bass and commissioners. We're excited to tell you a little bit about what we're up to. The Urban Design and Architecture Studio launched last year. Just after Thanksgiving, I joined the city, and we've been hard at work sort of getting up and running and trying to contribute along with other staff within the city to moving some of the goals and aspirations of the city forward. So I thought I would take this opportunity tonight to tell you a little bit about the studio, some of the things we're up to, and where we're perhaps going looking ahead. So currently the studio is made up of 4 others besides myself. Christina Sarkis is our lead senior project manager. Christina is overseeing many of our capital improvement projects that I'll be talking about in a minute. Todd Gish and Gwen Pugh, who you're familiar with, are handling our urban design role, or urban designer at this point. I think Gwen has appeared with you before you many times, and Todd is focusing primarily on staff level review of projects. And then in the last month, we've been joined by Jason Bravo, who's our new intern. We're excited to have him, very fortunate. And he is currently attending graduate school at Harvard University and telecommuting by day, his studies, and then helping us out in between as well. So we're really happy to have the team in place going forward. So what is the Urban Design and Architecture Studio? A lot of people were perhaps not as aware that this was a new entity created within the city. We're an entity that's supposed to be sort of looking in 2 directions. We're looking at today and projects and public spaces, city making concepts that are part of our active daily city making process that staff administers on a daily basis. But also I think we're supposed to be looking forward a little bit to where the city could be going, opportunities that might be present. West Hollywood has always been a very progressive and creative and innovative type of city. There's been amazing leadership amongst our long-range planning group, our innovations group, Francisco Contreras. Robin Eason has been doing a tremendous job in the sustainability efforts and climate action efforts. So I think there is that balance of looking ahead as much as administering the day-to-day. But specifically, the Urban Design and Architecture Studio is focusing on 4 different components of design. So the primary one that affects city projects in particular is the design oversight. And the design oversight that we primarily look for and provide is on capital improvement projects and items relating to city facilities and public spaces. And we do provide thoughts, identify opportunities, and then collaborate with many other divisions on projects, particularly in the public realm. We also work on design review. Those commissioners who were with us in our design review subcommittee efforts, we've been working hard to provide a consistent and predictable process through which all projects, regardless size or scale, will be looked at with a certain consistency and certainty and predictability. I'll be talking a little bit about that going forward. And then the visioning, the forward thinking as well. And we'll touch on that a little bit tonight. So starting with the design oversight components, and particularly the capital improvement projects, there's a number of things in the works within the city already. And certainly this pandemic condition has raised a few other areas that perhaps require some attention. So we've been collaborating with facilities and parks on city facilities in particular, working on the City Reinvented team with our IT staff and city manager's office, HR, to really think about what it will take to provide as safe a possible return when finally city facilities reopen. We're happy to be part of that team. We're also working on some upgrades and improvements to some of our city parks and other facilities. 1343 Laurel, others know it as Laurel House. There's some movement now going forward that's going to be looking at some of the preservation opportunities and reprogramming of the space. We anticipate this to really be getting going in the next month or two, I would say, in earnest. Hart Park, we're looking at some improvements and modifications, in particular to enhance accessibility at Hart Park, and also rethinking some of the programming and dog park elements as well. Christina Sarkis has been doing a wonderful job of helping to generate some concepts. Coast Playhouse has been acquired, that property by the city. We're doing some assessments of the existing condition right now and looking at recommendations moving forward. We'll be working with the Arts Division on some programming opportunities and looking at developing some budgets for council consideration on the future of Coast Playhouse. 621 Robertson was recently acquired, or not, I'm sorry, was recently leased by the city. And so we're providing some feasibility studies and collaborating with facilities as well on that. The AIDS Monument, Stories the AIDS Monument, which has been a tremendous effort by the Friends of the AIDS Monument group and staff working collaboratively. It was approved by Arts and Cultural Affairs Commission this past February, and it is going to be going to the City Council for consideration in the next month. It's been a remarkable effort with many, many individuals providing numerous hours of volunteer time, and we're really excited to be seeing it move forward finally. So that's the sort of design oversight. In terms of the collaborations, many have asked me what it is that the studio does. And I've described it as we're sort of like a satellite that's orbiting City Hall and sort of checking in and collaborating when needed. And I would say thus far that even in the less than a year time, we've worked with all the divisions on the screen in one way or another in terms of providing design feedback, design input, perhaps identifying some design opportunities that hadn't been raised to date. So we're excited, and I think one of the great joys of this this studio is the fact that we do get to work closely with so many divisions. One of those collaborations obviously will be part of Planning Commission oversight. The Arts and Advertising Program is something that's really going to dramatically change Sunset Boulevard going forward. Brian Eck in our long range division has been doing an amazing job of marshaling a lot of competing interests and putting together an amazing process. And I'm excited in whatever little way that we've been able to support his efforts. And that is going to be happening very, very soon. There's been a lot of talk, obviously, about Metro Rail coming to West Hollywood. Each day we're seeming like it's looking more and more positive. We're still crossing our fingers that it will ultimately happen. And to the extent that we've been able to support David Fenn and the work he's been doing to bring West Hollywood front and center to the opportunity to bring Metro, and how the design opportunities will be opened by this should it happen. So we're looking forward to participating in that. And then, you know, one of the big challenges is the future of our streets. There's a lot of opportunities going forward, but certainly competing interests. The Out Zones program with the outdoor dining has opened up new doors in terms of how public space traditionally has been used. But we're also cognizant that in the future, there's going to be a huge need for accommodating all these competing interests, not only for communication and public interfacing, but also different modes of delivery and technology integration, and you know, the e-bikes and scooters and other things, the bird scooters that we've seen. A lot of competition, and we're working on trying to find that balance with the future of our streets. And then, of course, the big emphasis also for the studio is the design review process, and whether it's projects that are looked at internally or going through the public hearing process and going to the Planning Commission, we've really honed in on how we can make a more streamlined, equitable, and relatively certain process so that property owners and developers understand expectations up front, and there's a clear communication to the design professionals. And so towards that end, we've been really thinking about design at 3 levels. The macro scale, the city itself, and how new projects might fit into the city. The space in between, the public spaces, the green spaces, and how new development might tie into that and certainly enhance it. And then obviously the bulk of our land use in the city is residential or commercial. And so it's, from one standpoint, it's relatively easy because we only have 2 primary land uses, but we're trying to hone in on the design aspects of these and how we can ensure that going forward, as the city develops, that it develops in the most positive way possible. So towards that end, we've tried to introduce certain things at the design review stage that sometimes are looked at internally, but are not brought as forward into the public process. And so the design review subcommittee is going to be looking at new development projects, not only from a zoning compliance perspective, but also how they reflect some of the other plans and programs that have been adopted by the city council. And a lot of these are not prescriptive, which makes our job a little bit trickier, because it's always easier to be able to point to a very specific numerical standard for certain things. But the whole idea of design is that you want enough flexibility that if the outcomes are clear of where we're going, you challenge the design professionals to be creative and come up with solutions to get there. And I think towards that end, we see our role as a design advocate and a peer reviewer to the design professionals, that if they're struggling to interpret or to understand some of the city goals, we're happy to be there to provide that expertise. And then of course, once the project goes through the design review process and it goes to the Planning Commission, there are many other things that you as commissioners have to take into account in deliberating and making decisions about the project. It's not only design, but to the extent that we can help be clear about the design aspect, that's our goal. And so towards that end, I mentioned earlier that we're working towards certainty and predictability. And so we've really simplified, I think, the way that all projects, regardless of size or scale, are going to be reviewed. And it's really just four steps. First, we're going to be looking at the proposal and the building design itself, how the building, the massing, its orientation, the program, the site have been set up. The second thing is the urban context, programming, and site design. In other words, from the public way, looking at a project and experiencing the project as a pedestrian, as a visitor, going through the city, walking by it. How does it fit into the context? Does it have a point of view about its neighbors, about the adjacencies, about certain elements that might be welcomed because they're missing? So that scale of review would be that second item. The third one is building performance. We do have state laws, Title 24 energy requirements, green building requirements that are, they can't be bypassed. They're required of every project. But I think City Council has been very clear that, that they're looking for thoughtful design that isn't just minimal compliance, but that really has a larger goal, and that is that that buildings should promote certain health and wellness. They should try to reduce energy demand before we even try to generate it with solar power or other types of alternative energy. We should be looking at carbon and energy consumption so that we're not needing to put in a lot of expensive active building systems for things. There's been discussions recently about air conditioning, for example. And so that's another lens that we're working with applicants. And then the last one is the environmental responsiveness. And that's everything from the outside of the building to the property line. All the things that creative designers can do, whether it's through elements on a building, projections and screens and buffers and overhangs and light shafts and canopies. There's many architectural devices that help a building be a better neighbor and really be in concert with the environment. But also outside the building, the perimeters, whether there's any green space integrated and how it does get integrated, so that we're really trying to perhaps restore some of the ecosystem that is often, it often degenerates through new construction and new development. I moved to West Hollywood 30 years ago, and I remember watching, squirrels jump from tree to tree, and the different seasons, different birds, and while we still have it, the pockets are far fewer. And I think we're mindful that new development can participate in the larger ecosystem in a thoughtful way. So these going forward are hopefully going to be very consistent and, as I said, across scales. Also, there's been discussion in the past about exemplary design. There's a component in the zoning code that affords property owners and developers the opportunity to request an exemplary design designation. This usually results in some additional floor area and a change to the massing, especially in the front yard. And we've really looked closely at that. And again, for reasons of being consistent, what we are doing going forward is being very clear about what exemplary design is. And basically, it's those solutions that reflect the type of development that the city is encouraging that I showed you in the last slide, heightened building performance, nice environmental responsiveness, and those projects that succeed in reflecting the city goals and aspirations for us become worthy of imitation or otherwise evolving and as building types. So I think this is the lens that when there is going to be exemplary design requests, that we're going to be very consistent again on how that's going to be looked at. All right, so the last component of what the studio is that sort of forward-thinking aspect I mentioned earlier. So whether it's through community outreach, educational programming, other analyses and studies, I think we're really interested in looking at not only today, but tomorrow. And the opportunities are really quite broad, I think, for the city going forward. We have a lot of activity in our streets, but as I said, you know, it's probably a good time now, given where we are, it's a good time to really think about how we proportion and ratio the use of the streets for commerce, for transit, for pedestrian activity, and for street side programming. They're all important. I think they all have to be part of our future as a city, but finding that balance. And I think that's something we're really interested in, that conversation. What I call sympathetic streets are streets that do integrate so many of these goals. So whether it's integrated seating areas, dining areas, planted areas, bike lanes, commerce on the street, how is it that going forward, our public spaces, which our streets are our greatest public space, if you look at it in terms of actual area, how they can be sympathetic in all ways, you know, to the environment, to those of differing abilities, to small businesses and large businesses, to those who are riding through the city, driving through the city, etc. Also, one of the things I've been very interested in as well are not only what's present, but looking ahead to what's missing. Where are the gaps in the city? What are the elements that if they were there, people wouldn't need to get in their car and drive? What are the small businesses in particular that can fill the gaps? If one is looking for a bakery, do you have to get in your car to go there? So taking into account that it's a linear city and maybe looking at it in terms of segments or different areas and trying to sort of unearth where those gaps might be and work with our development community, the chamber, small business community, to perhaps infill the gaps strategically to make a much more walkable city. Also understanding that cities are 24-hour in terms of their programming. On the right is a diagram that an architect did for Yokohama, Japan, and they mapped a 24-hour cycle and looked at the intensity of the city and how it changed hour by hour. Sometimes certain parts of the day, a lot of marketing and shopping, other times of day, entertainment or sports activities. But it's really interesting to think about West Hollywood as a 24-hour city and where those gaps might also be throughout, you know, the Sunset Strip, throughout our retail core and our commercial core, and within our residential zones. Where are the opportunities to kind of stitch together a more of a 24-hour cycle? And then streets themselves, I think many are starting to understand them as not single purpose, and that depending on certain events or programs that the city might want to have, that certain well-designed streets can actually transform very readily without sacrificing, for example, safety access for fire, for example, or ambulance. But there are ways that streets can be designed as almost outdoor living rooms in a way. And certainly not all the streets. I think these kind of strategies are best left for particular pockets. But I think going forward, that's something other communities have certainly looked at, are these sort of transformable living streets. And then even the design of what we might think of as something mundane like a parking lot. You know, the contrast of the parking lot on the left versus the parking lot on the right. The parking lot on the right is a thoughtfully designed space so that when the cars aren't there, there's actually opportunities to have a marketplace or a fair or a festival or what have you. That, you know, the idea that single-use spaces are needed. I think there's some opportunities to think more creatively about some of our hardscapes. And this is primarily where our heat island occurs, by the way, where our greatest climate change occurs, is the reflection off of hard surfaces. So to the extent that we can create event space and more eco-conscious space, I think that's an opportunity as well. So why does design thinking matter even in this context? We have a built out city. In fact, right now, I would say our challenge is going forward is to remodel the city because it's already built out. So it's adopting more of a remodel mindset. And that's a challenge in itself. But why is it important? Well, we're realizing that, you know, health and wellness cost tremendous amounts of money in healthcare and resources every year. And especially designing spaces that are, there's a term, sick building syndrome, where a lot of spaces are heavily reliant on air conditioning, they're sealed tight. Air conditioning, if not cleaned, the filters and the ducts, you know, can have health issues. So we're starting to think about spaces of the future, especially office spaces of the future, city facilities, and how we can enhance space through a lens of health and wellness, through connection to the outdoors, through daylighting, through airflow that's more natural. We're also really interested in public spaces that can be safe and secure, but also multisensory, to be more inclusive, to understand the experience of space through all the senses we have. This is actually Havenhurst Park in West Hollywood. And this is one of the multisensory spaces we have in the city. If you were to go there, you would hear an audio artwork piece, you would hear water movement. It's incredibly fragrant in terms of the smells. There's actually an edible garden there. The patterning and textures. It's a space that really takes into account all the senses that make us human. And to the extent that we can think about that multisensory approach through new development, I think that's always going to be welcome as an opportunity. Biodiversity is also a huge question going forward. This is actually an image from Joel Sartore, who's produced what he calls a photo arc. It's been profiled on 60 Minutes several times, but he's been traveling the world to document all the diversity in species, many of which are endangered. And it's interesting to think about even just our West Hollywood urban wildlife and what was here and oftentimes still is here. We actually have a rather diverse ecosystem, but as development occurs, and especially a lot of the urban forest is changing, I think that changes some of the opportunities for wildlife propagation. I think going forward, you know, looking at new developments, what type of encouragement for habitats might be of interest. A simple thing that many communities have looked at are the backyards, because frankly, when you look at our public streets and our sidewalks and the amount of hardscape other than our public parks, our primary green space in the city are the backyards, especially the, how do I say this? The pre-2010 development backyards. We have seen a trend where we're not seeing as many backyards in new development anymore. But for those that we do have, some communities have gone to certified backyard habitat programs where they encourage local property owners to participate as a community in the propagation of certain wildlife and attracting certain species and providing certain nesting grounds or opportunities for expanding the population of wildlife. So that's a simple, easy idea, but I think West Hollywood, we're very creative, and I think that's something that if we put our minds to it, I think we could see some opportunities. So forecasting, looking ahead, what type of development would be ideal and optimal, and where could we go? Where are the possibilities beyond where we are? Because I think we're doing an excellent job on the green building side and pushing certain sustainable approaches. But I think there might be some other opportunities that I wanted to at least share as part of this information session. So the first obviously is climate action. That's high on everybody's list. It's in the forefront of everybody's mind. But how can we encourage even greater performance-oriented design? This is actually an image that Robin Eason provided from the climate action plan efforts that she's been working on. And you can see from this scale from left to right that it goes from a very passive approach that starts with how we orient buildings in the first place to minimize the need for energy and some of the passive strategies, all the way to the right side, which is full active systems, less desirable, that require energy, a lot of energy to operate, that are expensive, that need maintenance, and are not as climate responsive. So I think this is something we're really excited to be working with Robin on going forward, and how design might play a role in climate, as well as monitoring and metering gas emissions and things like that. Environmentally responsive design is another thing that I'm very interested in. A lot of times it's not very difficult to integrate into projects. Simple things like extended eaves and overhangs, screens and shading devices, some green pockets integrated, whether it's on roofs or on grade, but things that really take design to a next level, especially when we're looking at housing and commercial types of projects. Without question, accommodating accessibility in the design is critical, but oftentimes accommodating it is done with something that's more of an afterthought because it's a requirement. But I think we're also hoping to encourage designs that actually take the challenge of providing equity in terms of accessibility into the design and creating clever designs that obviously have to be safe. This is an example from Europe, I might point out. So I don't know that this would entirely be code compliant. I know it wouldn't be in the United States. But what I wanted to point out, though, is with creativity, one could integrate different types of accessibility without sacrificing good design. Taking it to a next level also would be considering universal design. Universal design is going beyond simple accessibility that oftentimes people think of in terms of wheelchair access. But in fact, we have so many different types of and different levels of ability. And whether it's sight or mobility challenges, hearing challenges, even scale challenges, people of different heights or different sizes. So on the right is a project that I just wanted to introduce to the commission, because I'm really enamored by it. It's a project that's called Enabling Village in Singapore. And it's a community space that is for people of all different abilities. It's got gathering spaces, classrooms, performance spaces, but you can see from this outdoor space how they even do seating that's high and low, all types of accessible strategies, but ways to have a large gathering and have a public event for all different types of abilities. So I think, you know, putting our minds to it, that's certainly something that's possible. And that also translates even to the housing that is designed. There's also something called social purpose design. This project in particular, I think, is really exceptional, because what it does is it creates in a city that has difficulty procuring fresh vegetables and fruits, an actual vertical farm facility where they use hydroponics to grow fresh vegetables that supply the marketplaces and the restaurants. But what they did here is they made a concerted effort to only hire employees who are from underserved populations, who typically have trouble getting jobs in the open marketplace. And so it's fulfilling not only an environmental and food sourcing goal and objective, but it's also on a job training and job and employment side of things, really making a better city. And so I think even social purpose inspired design is something that you know, I hope to see a lot more of in the future, looking into the crystal ball. I think it's very exciting, the potential. Just another interior of some of the hydroponics and how this is all done vertically in a very small space. So in the place of a large farm that's all horizontal and you know, is subject to overwatering or flooding or drought, here you have a very controlled environment to create non-pesticide, very healthy, water limited types of food production. So really very thoughtful. Another type of design that we're seeing is biophilic design. Biophilic design is design that thinks about being in concert with nature on a one-to-one basis, looking at how nature operates and designing buildings and spaces to kind of reflect that cycle, to incorporate materials and resources that allow for a very healthy sort of indoor-outdoor relationship. This is something that's also becoming very popular as an opportunity going forward. And then the last type of design that I think is taking things to the ultimate level is called regenerative design. And this type of design, if you look at the diagram, the horizontal scale, you'll see conventional, green, sustainable, restorative, and regenerative. Conventional design is where we were. We were all the way to the left. And I think through state law, local policy, we've now sort of moved towards green design with the hope to kind of introduce sustainability here and there. But right now on this scale, I would say we're sort of at the green stage. So we're still at a point where more energy is required than perhaps necessary, and certainly not tapping into some of the other opportunities to move to the green side, where we can really have new buildings that are much more in tune with nature and ecosystems and require less energy. And regenerative design is the ultimate, all the way to the right side of the scale. We don't have a lot of examples of it, but one that I think is often pointed to and looked to is in Vancouver, this botanical visitor center that Perkins and Will designed. But it was designed with the mindset of sort of restoring the ecosystem where it was sited. Much of the facility is underground, but there's very careful daylighting and windows that open that allow for passive cooling. So it's a facility that was really thought thoughtful from the forefront, and from the beginning really sought to go far beyond what is normally required. So those are just some of the things that I wanted to point out as opportunities, or at least maybe not within West Hollywood, perhaps yes, perhaps no, but where I'm sort of seeing from a crystal ball standpoint the potential. But if we come back to West Hollywood and we say, okay, well, how are some of these aspirations and goals really applicable to a city that is primarily residential and commercial? I thought I would focus just briefly on housing design and production itself. So, currently there's an understanding now, hopefully it's not new news, but that there's more work to be done in terms of meeting the needs of society and our most vulnerable in society. And so if we take a look back at where West Hollywood started, this is actually an image of from a land grant map of Rancho Cienega land. And in there, it's kind of hard to see, but there's some Spanish there that talks about Cienega, which translates as the swamp. We know that much of West Hollywood has a lot of underground water and marshy conditions historically. But this is where it started. And now it's been developed. As I said, we are fully built out. Virtually every property has a building. So most projects, as you see before you, request demolition and new construction. So that's what I was talking about earlier in terms of the remodel mindset. And so moving forward, for me, it's not just a quantitative exercise about density, how many units can be fit in a particular lot. I think there's a lot bigger question to ask alongside of that. There are also other things, as you know, that affect the local planning authorities' ability to encourage certain things. So much of housing policy now is happening at the state level. And this graphic or this image is just an example of, in the last year and a half, all the different bills that have been introduced relating to housing in some way. It's pretty astonishing. And if you go back 5 years, it wouldn't even fit on a slide. You'd need multiple slides of how much has happened. But being mindful of that, I think we still can come back to the local level and say, how do we move from simple density and concerns on a quantitative basis of just adding housing units to really looking at how we can create living environments for people that are equitable with what I'm calling a socioeconomic intensity. And so what's brought forward through intensity are all the other things in the bar above there. The proximity to goods and services. Can we include or integrate housing with other things so that it's walkable? Safety and security is critical. Accessibility is a given. But lifestyle choices. We have a great diversity of lifestyle preferences in the city, from individuals to couples, to families, to nuclear families, to roommate conditions. We have a range and diversity that our housing really needs to address. Resiliency looks closely at nature's forces, earthquake, winds, flooding, fire, and how we can design in the most efficient way to not only combat emergencies, but recover from them quickly. Affordability and climate we've talked about. So all of these ideas I think are important and possible in the city that's going to be made going forward. So within the urban design and architecture studio, we've started looking at some studies of how housing units can start to reflect all these goals and aspirations, without great expense and need of space. And they're just exercises. They're just thought, how do I say this? They're brainstorming efforts, basically. But here's an example of a unit that is incredibly compact. It's a little over 500 square feet. It has a range of open space. It has a very reasonable kitchen and bathroom space. But what's unique about it is it also accommodates a little home office pod, understanding going forward that many in the city will be working from home. And how do we design units of the future where you don't have to use a dining table or your bedroom as your home office, but you actually have a little space, an alcove or something where you can have your office life, and then you close the door and you move away from that. But the home office lifestyle is something really of interest going forward. But I think there's other things within the unit that are important. You know, how daylighting and cross ventilation, for example, play into this. In this case, instead of having a balcony that's projecting off of the unit, which we see more often than not in the housing that comes forward, if you simply take that same outdoor space and you tuck it in and integrate it into the unit, now you have fresh air and fresh light that is possible. In this hypothetical, we're even showing a heating element, a see-through fireplace element that would provide heat for the unit, but also on a colder winter night would still allow for an outdoor deck or terrace to be used. The home office has windows on both sides of it, so that just simply by opening windows, you have fresh air coming through. This unit also even has little pockets for green space, for growing vegetables, for you know, having something in close proximity. So these are ideas that are very simple, something that I think over time, hopefully we'll see some of these types of approaches and ideas come in. Here's another example in a one bedroom type of configuration, a very similar type of approach where that flex space can become a home office. And in fact, if it's designed well, if the need is there for, say, a caregiver, there's room for transforming that space into a little sleeping space if somebody needs to stay overnight, for example. The other thing I wanted to point out was as we get smaller, the smaller the units, the more important it becomes for the critical need for storage. And so these blue areas also integrate all kinds of diverse storage areas. Why does that matter? Well, here's an example. This is sort of a composite unit where I took examples from projects of the past that I've seen, you know, regular typical unit that might be coming forward. And what we've seen in studio units are the basics. You know, you must provide a kitchen, you must provide a bathroom. We have an outdoor space requirement. So in this case, you know, a balcony space. But other than a small storage component, this is a very base unit. The challenge though is in terms of affordability, yes, it may be small in square footage, but you need to furnish it. So in order to move in, you have to buy a lot of furniture. And when storage isn't provided, you have to buy dressers, wardrobes, storage units, other things that are testing one's ability to move in. You know, sometimes if you're buying all these extra units, it could be several $1,000s of furniture just to move in to an empty unit. So why does design matter? Well, if you take the same exact size unit and you shorten it slightly and make it slightly wider, you see all the blue spaces are now the storage components. You have room for a pantry, for a guest closet, for a utility space, for clothing storage, for linens, all the things that are daily needs that in the base unit are really hard to accommodate. Things that we often forget about, like mops and brooms and ironing boards. These are real things that require storage. And through some very small design gestures, in this case, tucking in a little two-seater dining space. This unit on the left, you could move in with one piece of furniture, a sofa bed. That's the only thing you would have to purchase, and it would be plug and play, compared to the unit on the right, where you would have an awful lot of furniture in order to occupy the unit. So when we talk about affordability, it's not simply a question of the rent. It's a question of what it's going to take to move into it and to operate it and to pay the utilities and all the other things. So units that are nicely ventilated with daylighting, where you have low energy costs and are furnished or designed in a way that don't require a lot of furnishings, are another step towards affordability and making some of these spaces more accessible to more of our residents. So with that, I know that I put a lot on the table in terms of who we are, what we're doing, some of the aspirations, but I think that there are some opportunities for West Hollywood, and we're really interested in the Planning Commission discussion and thoughts of where you think perhaps some emphasis might be going forward, in any direction you might want to give us in terms of working with applicants as well. So at that, I think I'll turn it back over to Chair Bass.
Thank you very much. I appreciate that. Can you stop sharing your screen so I can see the commissioners? Thank you. That way I know who's interested in asking some questions. If don't all jump at once. Commissioner Hoopengartner, say your hand.
Well, first of all, that was outstanding, Rick. I will actually say you brought me to tears with that hydroponics. I got verklempt. I think this is just an outstanding way to help us frame our decision-making, especially at design review. I think you've brought to light some outstanding ideas and concepts, and I would suggest that we box this and deliver it to every applicant on the day they cross our threshold to help them guide their thinking. I have to compliment you. I know this was a lot of work for you to pull together, but I think I'm sure it also is helping you frame the direction of the department. And I don't actually have any questions. I'm sure I will, because I'm kind of overwhelmed with the quality and the quantity of what you've given us. Thank you.
Yes, Commissioner Jones.
Thank you. Yeah, thank you, Rick Abramson. This was really great. I think there was a lot of information and incredibly helpful, but I think I'm someone who likes to kind of sit with things. Is there any way that we could get a copy of the presentation and kind of stew on it a bit, and then maybe provide some feedback in the next couple of meetings? I think just a lot to digest, and obviously the Urban Design and Architecture Studio is adding a lot of value to what the department is already doing and undertaking, but I think I just want to kind of let it all congeal a little bit in my mind. That'd be helpful if you're amenable to that.
Of course, yeah, we're happy to share it. And I believe this is also available to the public on the city's meeting, what's it called? David Gillick can help me with this, but in our archive to look at the meetings. I think it'll be available there as well, but I'm happy to share the presentation, of course.
Yeah, that'd be great.
Thank you. Commissioner Buckner.
I just want to thank you, Rick. You put a lot of time and energy and work into that. And I agree with Stacy and of course, Lynn. It'd be great to be able to go back and look at it. It was a lot. And so many good ideas. So I guess you recorded this, right?
Yes.
Okay, good. Thank you so much. As I've said to you in private, you're doing an amazing job, so helpful, and it's giving us a real way to focus on the direction that we're going on in the city. So thank you so much for all your hard work.
Thank you.
Commissioner Altschul.
I agree with Lynn, Stacy, Sue, all of them. It was a fantastic presentation, Rick, and kudos. Tremendous presentation.
Thank you.
Rosario? Do you have anything?
I mean, I loved it. So it's all very much up my alley. And I was actually, I mean, whether it's appropriate or not, Rick, I have a final studio coming up in December, and we're actually taking the EMSR building and doing a hydroponics residential market combination multi-use building conversion for the EMSR building. Would you consider being part of the final review? And you can let me know tomorrow.
Okay.
It's exactly what all the things that you presented today are issues that we're dealing with in this theoretical project for the conversion of the EMSR building.
Wonderful.
Thank you.
Great.
Vice Chair Erickson?
Thanks, Rick. Appreciate it. This might be your longest presentation to us ever since you've really come on. So it's good to see that you brought it home in many ways. I would love to see and how we can encourage safer streets. I think that's something that many people I've spoken to in the ways in which I'm doing other things talk to me about they don't feel safe biking on our neighborhoods, using our micromobility options, which I know the council has yet to decide on. But looking at how our Complete Streets program is something that needs to be emphasized in all new development, especially along transit corridors, as we look at how state law itself is trying to dictate not only housing aspects, but how we're going to have to make sure we fit into those things. And because transit corridors are pretty much the entire part of West Hollywood, because we're all along one, I think that's critical. I also want to make sure that I did not get verklempt like Lynn did. However, I will say that the green space emphasis and the ways in which we can prevent and further add to our arsenal of combating climate change with our new developments is critical. So I want to commend you there. And I think that that is something that we should be looking more at with how we're looking at stagnant spaces, even the maybe one day parking lot that will maybe one day be something else at Crescent Heights and Santa Monica Boulevard. We're still holding out that might one day happen. I don't know, Jennifer, you can give us an update on that one day, hopefully. But the ways in which that itself would just be an open vacant lot and how we can make it green and community friendly in the ways in which the spaces that you're talking about. I really love the ways in which you're emphasizing the Coast Playhouse development. I know we also, the Planning Commission, I don't remember what timeline it was a while ago when we procured the other place, a part of the general plan, but emphasizing how we can even ourselves, once COVID is done, create a mini arts district in the ways in which we can really have a vibrant nightlife in that whole area right there. I mean, I've been in the Coast Playhouse before to see some plays. It's a great space. We need to make sure it's accessible to our communities, especially those who have different abilities. And I want to make sure we're doing that. But I'm really excited about that feature because I geek out over theater and I love it. And so I'm really excited to see how that goes. And then the last thing I would love to see in the ways in which we look at development is the increased emphasis on live work spaces. I mean, this is something that we see now more than ever, and how people are not going back to office spaces. So ultimately, how are we promoting as a city of West Hollywood through our development structures, people to stay safe at home, to have the ability to work from home? We are, relying less on cars. So how we're emphasizing other things. I would love to be and see a day where I no longer have to get into my car. I would love to, as the metro comes here, be able to walk down and get to Planned Parenthood that way. But those are all things that I think when it comes to design and how how you guys do it. You all do it so well, and it so eloquently was put out in the presentation. That's critical, because this isn't about just combating the COVID crisis, right? And what we're doing now. It's about looking really at the future of the city and how our development is. And it's nice to see that that we're taking this emphasis and start now. And so I commend you and the team for all of the work that you're doing.
Thank you. I will echo what the others said. I look forward to reviewing this again and looking or digesting what we received tonight. But I will say that I'm very excited about planning issues because I think this adds a dimension that the community has wanted for a very long time, and I'm excited that this is a new element for the city of West Hollywood, and I appreciate the thoughtfulness of the presentation. So seeing no more raised hands, I do want to come right to you, Commissioner Hoopengarter, really quickly ask David if there was anybody who's signed up to speak on this item from the public.
No, nobody was signed up for this particular item.
Okay, thank you. I didn't want to miss the opportunity for public comment. Lynn, did you have something else?
Just a final comment that as I think we all can appreciate, Rick has some very thoughtful ideas regarding the designs in our city, and I would like to encourage staff to avail our developers of the services of urban design as early as possible in the process, because some of these ideas can fundamentally change a design for the better for both the developer and the city. And rather than, sort of wait until it comes to design review and then have comments, incorporate urban design as early as possible in the process, so that the opportunity exists to start on the best footing at the very beginning. That's all.
Thank you very much.
Chair Bass, I just have one other comment. And I just want to kind of be clear about a lot of what we talked about tonight is I would say characterized as aspirational. It's not codified. It's not necessarily within the regulatory framework at this point. So I think we'll be looking for city council input as well, if there is interest in sort of codifying some of these things, making them more required versus aspirational. But I think right now we're just hoping to partner to the extent we can with our property owners and developers and encourage them as much as we can. But I just wanted to be clear that a lot of these things are not necessarily, required. So thank you for the time this evening. Appreciate it.
Thank you very much. David, I just got a text message that we do have one member of the public who has been waiting to speak on this item. So do you have Kathy Blavis available?
She can speak. I'm not sure what her phone number is. I'm in the queue. But Kathy, if you're there. Because I only have basically 3 people in the queue. So
3156 is the ending number. If you unmute her, that would be her.
Okay, Kathy, go ahead. You can come on in and give us your comments. And I actually cannot unmute her.
Ah, okay.
And I'm not sure why.
Can she hit *6? That's what happens at the Public Safety Commission meeting.
Try *6, Kathy, if you can hear us.
Or Kathy, come over to my house. We're on the east side. I'll go outside with my computer and you can speak into my laptop.
Or you might want to just hang up and give us a call back in if you want, and then we'll just take your comment when you get back in.
I just got a text that's saying she cannot hear us, right now. So I'm going to turn to Lauren. But since we're on this item, shall we wait before we move forward with our agenda to hear that public comment, or what should we do on this?
Well, you're not taking any action on the item. So unless she calls back in the next 30 seconds or so, maybe you can discuss 11A and B, and then we can hear Kathy's comments after that.
You could speak at general comment.
Yeah.
Okay,
Maybe
I didn't know if this was a situation where we had to wait before we moved on the item, but since we're not taking action, I just that suggestion that she call back.
Okay.
A text. So with that, I do believe that Ruggiero is going to say
Thank you. Have a good evening.
Okay, so we are going to.
I'll just announce that Ruggiero had to recuse for a financial conflict of interest in the billboard project. So he forgot to say that before he signed off. So I'll just let that be known for the record. He has a source of income involved in the projects.
Thank you.
Chair, and I believe Commissioner Buckner and Commissioner Elchel may need to be in that also, to be recused.
I think they can participate in this conversation about creating a new subcommittee. Commissioner Carvalero is not going to participate in any of the billboard conversations, but this is just to discuss whether to create a different design review subcommittee. And as Brian will say in just a moment, they probably won't be on the committee.
Commissioner Buckner, I see your hand, but you're on mute, so we can't hear you.
I'm not mute. Since we can't participate, I mean, we can't be on the commission, John or I, right? Because if we don't know what billboards in what area might be close to where our 500-foot residents. So
I think Kathy's on.
Sounds like it.
Hello?
Yes,
I don't know. Can you hear me?
Now, Kathy, if
can
you could
hear you.
for just one moment while we determine whether
Sure. Okay, thank you so much.
Mr. Buckner are going to continue with this. Should we hear this comment and then continue the conversation? I'm sorry. I'm looking to you, Lauren, for advice.
Why don't we hear from Kathy because she's on before we get into it, and then why don't we let Brian explain what 11A and 11B are for the public, and then we can have a conversation about it.
Perfect. Okay. So Kathy, the floor is yours, and I apologize about not having you sooner, but we had just barely moved on, so your comments are appropriate at this point, and I welcome you to speak. Thank you for being persistent.
Thank you so much, Chair. Thank you so much, Chair Bass. I'm not sure it's all on you. I'm a little technically challenged, but I have never, ever in all my years of paying attention to what's going on in this city been so impressed by a presentation. I literally got the chills finally hearing that there'll be an explanation for what exemplary design means. So I just really wanted to compliment Rick Abrams and the entire team for not only showing us all of these ideas and concepts and a plan, an actual plan for what our city could look like, but doing it in a way that someone like myself, who is beyond technically challenged, also architecturally challenged, lingo challenged, to really understand and see exactly what the possibilities are. I really, truly have never been so excited for what the potential is of our city. So having said that, I will cut this short by saying, and if voting on November 3rd gave us an option to vote for every single thing I just saw in this presentation, you have my vote. So thank you so much, and thank you to the commission for letting me chime in after the fact. Thank you so much. Have a good evening, and everybody stay safe and stay well.
Thank you, and I appreciate your persistence again, and I think that your comments are valuable for our discussion. So let's move on to 11A and 11B. Brian, do you want to kind of tell us where we're at? And do we still have Sue, or did she? She don't see her on my screen. There.
So you're on mute.
I'm just saying that the reason I go in and out is that I'm not feeling very well today. So I'm just that's where I'm at. So anyway, but I'm here, I'm listening.
Great.
And
Thanks, Brian.
I'm watching when I can, but I'm having a little issues today.
Sure. Good evening, commissioners. Brian Eck, I'm the acting long-range planning manager. Really quick presentation and overview here. The recommendation is to have the commission create a new subcommittee that would provide the initial review of projects and policy matters related to the Sunset Arts and Advertising Program. There are several reasons for this recommendation. First is the sheer amount of projects that the commission is likely to see. There's likely as many as 30 projects over the next 2 years that could be in front of this commission. And then the current composition of the design review subcommittee would present the situation for many of these projects, a good portion of them, where only a single member could be present because of recusals. And so for those reasons, we're recommending the creation of a committee that would be free of those recusals. And then the second portion of this is to select the members and the meeting time. And I'm happy to discuss in more detail, but that's the broad strokes of it.
And please, Commissioner Jones.
And Brian, thanks, Chair Bass. Just one question for you, Brian. Is there a reason why we wouldn't make this like an ad hoc committee that's just over the period of 2 years as opposed to something that's permanent? Or does staff feel that it's more like the community would be better served by having a permanent subcommittee?
We discussed this, and I think having a regularly scheduled meeting, just given the volume of projects, probably serves the community and the commission as well. Just so you know that there's a regular meeting time. And there's sort of the expectation of what the committee handles.
Okay, thank you.
Commissioner Hoopengarner?
Yes, so I don't know if you have it available, Brian, the little brochure you had that you showed us at design review with, you know, some of the examples of the things that were submitted and awarded in the award process for I think it's 21 projects. And I don't know if you can share that with everybody, but my concern about this concept is that many of these projects are going to come to design review because they're integrated parts of buildings. And so how is it that we would have a billboard subcommittee that would be distinct and separate, and we've still got the recusal issues on design review? So I'm just kind of wondering, wouldn't it make more sense, because this is still all design, to keep it as design review and introduce the concept that we used to have, which is alternates who could substitute in when a regular commissioner had to recuse for financial conflicts or for proximity issues. I'm just back to the transparency with the public. Now we're introducing another day of the week, another entity, and another need to track, another cross purposes with the Brown Act. I'm just a little confused as to why this is a better approach.
So yeah, I mean, I'd be happy to pull up the document. Yeah, many of the projects are tied with development projects, whether it's major remodels or brand new construction, but the recusal problem persists whether it is just a standalone billboard or a development project. And so taking those projects wholesale and putting them before a new committee would resolve that conflict. And then Lauren can talk about, I think,
design review not review new buildings at all if they have a billboard on them?
No, I'm not saying that at all. I think this committee might serve that function, or those elements could be reviewed separately, and then we could marry up the comments. Sometimes they are very interrelated and hard to separate. So I think that really speaks to the need to have a very separate and distinct committee, because the recusal problem, again, will come up in many instances.
But in that case, then a new building, a new construction would not come to design review at all, is what you're recommending.
Again, the recusal problem would be the same.
So you would still have 3 planning commissioners reviewing. It would just be under a different subcommittee, but they would be providing comments on both the design of the sign and design of the new structure. I think that's how it would play out in the situation where a billboard is integrated into a development project.
But that would completely end run the design review process. The current design review.
But to Brian's point, if there's a project that only one person on design review can review, it's a better outcome to have that project reviewed by just a different group of 3 commissioners. And Commissioner Hoopengarter, you can serve on both. You have no conflict, so you can absolutely serve on both if that's your.
I'm concerned about that from my perspective at all. It's just having 2 committees and you know, this building goes to that committee and that building goes to that committee. To me, the alternate process would be a more efficacious process than 2 whole committees. Who serves that's another whole conversation, which is the next agenda item. Certainly at a minimum, I would want to make sure that urban design is equally involved in these projects as they would be in projects brought before design review.
And because I see their hands up, when we're done with this conversation, I'm going to call on Commissioner Buckner and Commissioner Altschul. I see your hands, but I want to make sure, Commissioner Hoopengarter, you had your questions answered.
I have more, but go ahead.
Okay, Commissioner Buckner, you're on mute.
I'm just wondering if there's 21 projects coming. I understand that Rogerio he's involved in a lot of the projects for a lot of reasons, but how many of those billboards or buildings are actually within 500 feet of where my residence is? It's probably not very many. Doesn't make sense to form a whole new committee, because mostly Lynn and I would be able to be there.
It's only 1 or 2 instances where we would need an alternate.
It doesn't make sense.
I agree.
I counted up, and there's actually 5, potentially 6 projects that are within the 500 feet. We did the radius map for both you and for Commissioner Altschul.
And Commissioner Buckner, do you have more? And then I'll go to Commissioner Altschul.
No, it just seems it's a lot of layers and a lot of confusion, but whatever.
Commissioner Altschul?
Yeah, I agree with Lynn. And I also am going to sign off now because I have no connection to this, since I have to recuse myself on all those items. Good night, all.
Commissioner Jones?
Yeah, I just want to make sure I'm understanding here. So it sounds like what staff is proposing is a solution that is essentially, this situation is very much specific to kind of the current composition of the commission, correct? It's because of where people live. It's because of people's professions or their connection to projects. So, I mean, it seems to me that really the only workaround for this is a situation where we either, do this and do the separate subcommittee, or we have a completely different composition of people on design review, which I don't know that I think that the latter is a desirable outcome. So I totally understand what Lynn and Sue are saying, and I'm not like prone to disagree, I suppose. I just I guess if there's a time on, in the future of planning commission where we don't have a situation like this, we could, I guess, take it back to 1. I just want to think about like future kind of connotations of this and what that will mean for these kinds of projects going forward. But it sounds like this is born out of necessity, just based on who is on what commission and where people live right now, correct?
Well, again, there's nothing to prevent us from going back to what we did have, which is an alternate. But
I think but we had an extensive discussion about the alternate situation. Lynn, I agree with you that I would prefer to do alternates, but the problem is that we get into a situation where we have a quorum prior to something coming to planning commission, correct?
Well, but
we have more people seeing a project.
The Brown Act wouldn't be any different of an issue with a separate subcommittee or the existing design review. Either way, you've got to track who's heard what. So,
sorry, go on.
So I guess if you got to track it on a, yet another committee versus track it on existing design review, as I said, when this was first brought up, we have a very talented and thorough and efficient secretary. Mr. Gillig is perfectly capable of figuring out who's served on what hearings, and therefore making sure that we don't have any potential Brown Act issues. Having a whole separate committee, to me, and to Sue's point, yes, she may have to recuse herself from a couple of them, but it's not all 21, and they're all, they're going to be spread out over years. So configuring a whole new committee that's got to find a new date, new noticing requirements. How are people going to know when these things are going to be heard? They know when design review is. I'm about the transparency here. People know when design review is. They know to look for an agenda. They don't know when these meetings are going to be. And the noticing is going to be more problematic, in my opinion. So to me, this is about the transparency and the efficiency. It's not about who's serving.
Commissioner Buckner?
And John and I aren't always off on the same one, because we don't really live that close to each other. So I don't know what those projects are or what, but I agree. It seems like confusing. And so these three people will be on this committee and the other three will be on the other. It's just going to be it's going to be more complicated, I think, but I don't know. I'm not in charge of programming.
Can I ask what the difference would be from a staff level if we appointed an alternate to the design review committee for the specific purpose of billboard projects? Because we know Ruggerio's on design review, and I think that's a fantastic thing for our city to have him on design review. That's why I appointed him to be back on that committee at our last meeting or meeting before. But if we appointed an alternate for the projects that include a billboard, we could track those the same way. Basically, they go to this committee or that committee, it's what's being proposed, but instead it would that person would replace Ruggerio for those meetings. And in those rare cases where Sue was also involved, we would still have
two people
alternate. So we'd still have a two-member committee for those few projects.
I like the idea.
Is it the same thing by a different name? I'm interested in staff's perspective on that.
Brian, you want to take that or you want me?
No, I mean, this is more of a David and Lauren question, because procedurally, the alternate question I haven't been involved in,
Yeah,
so I don't have the backstory on that.
We're coming with you to our best professional recommendation of the best way to handle a situation when we have one design review commissioner who is recused from every single billboard project, and a number of ones where a second commissioner will be recused because of location. So our best recommendation and the way to set the expectation with the public and let the public know now how these are all going to be processed before they all start is this will be the process for billboard projects. So I completely hear what Commissioner Hooper-Gardner is saying, and we've talked about this a couple times now, but I think in this instance, we're coming to you with the recommendation that we think is the best way to handle it, the most transparent and easiest to administer. So we're not tracking. We know who hears billboard projects with this complicated set of recusals that we're dealing with, which is highly unusual. We don't usually have a situation like this. It's highly unusual, so we're coming to you with this recommendation.
One more question for you. When do we anticipate, and this might be a shot in the dark or you might know the answer, but when do we anticipate the first of these applications proceeding?
The next meeting, at the next hearing. It's penciled in.
The reason I ask that is I'm gonna talk politics here really quickly. Ruggerio has been appointed by Councilmember Duran, and I will say to the candidate who's part of this meeting as well as the rest of them, please give whoever wins, give us Ruggerio back. He's fantastic on this commission. So that's my lobbying for whoever wins on November 3rd. But we could have a completely different commission in just a matter of weeks. So I want to be aware of that too. We might even have these complications in literally a matter of weeks. Does that impact that? That's why I asked the timing question.
Yeah, I will say the first of these projects that are coming forward are associated with historic resources. They are the change out of just the existing billboard for digital. And so we felt these projects did not necessarily need to go to a subcommittee because the historic, the city's historic commission is really the design review on those projects. So yes, we could delay some time for the larger, more complex projects. We could defer this question.
Yeah, we can think about it. We've heard your feedback, maybe regroup as staff and come back shortly.
I think just, you know, I don't know how to appropriately, Lauren, please throw up the red flag if I say anything I shouldn't say, please, like, you know. Lots could happen in 18 days. I think it's appropriate to wait in those aspects. I'm not saying I count any chickens before any chicken is even hatched, but we do have Donald Trump as president. So I'm just saying crazier things in this world have happened, right? So I think it's good to wait. I know that there's a sense of urgency on these items. I want to be respectful of staff's time. I don't want to put any more, David already does a lot. And so I don't want to give him, I don't even know as a former staffer how tracking all of that would go in a way, because I handled all those things. So I'm hesitant to give staff any more work when they're already doing so much, and very well, by the way, I might say, David. But, you know, I think we should wait.
So there's one other idea that I have, and the circumstance that brings this up is because of the makeup of the current commission. When we appointed subcommittees just a few meetings ago, it's probably been months, but it's only a couple of meetings, we eliminated a couple because there was no longer a need. So part of me is inclined to say we support staff's recommendation so that there is a process, it is established, and then, you know, as is history in West Hollywood, you know, incumbents get reelected, reappoint the same people. I mean, that's how things have gone in the past to a large degree. We're already done. We're ready to go. But if it's a new commission, they have the prerogative to, without those conflicts, just eliminate the committee for lack of need at that point in time. So, I mean, we have an item before us that can solve this problem without having to revisit it. And so I would be inclined to support staff's recommendation, knowing that it's entirely possible in just a few meetings they get eliminated again. But I not the hill I'm going to die on, so I will defer to what my four colleagues here want to do. Commissioner Jones, please.
Yeah, I'm also inclined to move forward, and if we need to make changes pending election results, then I think we can do that. You know, yeah, I mean, I don't see an issue with it, and I think just having it in place before, and there might not be changes, we don't know, but having it in place to move forward is, I'm aligned with that. Again, I don't feel terribly strongly about it one way or the other, but I think staff is trying to set us up and the community up for, you know, success here, just in terms of making sure that there is a process that's fair and that also doesn't violate Brown Act. So, and we've had extensive conversations about all of the reasons why, you know, staff and city attorneys uncomfortable with the alternate situation. So I'm fine with this.
Can I ask staff a question? When would you anticipate these hearings being held, given that we have, you know, Thursdays are kind of out now. So would you be like replacing design review hearings, or would they be supplemental to design review hearings in terms of the dates? How would that work?
When we looked at this, it looks like the off Thursday that long range does not meet might be an option here. I think it's the first Thursday of the month.
But design review, well.
So it would be in lieu of long range, it would be before the planning commission meeting.
Correct.
I personally would have a problem with that, because especially for the large projects, that would limit the hearing to an hour. And we had enough problems when I was on long range running out of time, and having a deadline at the end for the time limit on the meeting, I think is very problematic and speaks against transparency and the public process. So that date to me would not be acceptable, and for lots of reasons. You in design review, it's about having the conversation. It's about exploring the opportunities. It's about meeting with the architect and the community, and really exploring the possibilities. And if you've got an hour deadline, that's just not possible.
Sure, and we could always pick another day and time of the week. That was just our initial suggestion, just because of the ease and the normal rhythm of the commission and subcommittees.
Sure. But I'm sorry, it really, like this hearing, it needs to be an open-ended hearing in terms of the time limit, and the long range option, I think, is it's a non-starter for me. So I guess my question is back to, when could this possibly happen, given all of the other commissions that meet throughout the city, all of the nights that they happen? I think this is one of the reasons why I've been advocating sticking with design reviews, simply because when are we going to layer this into the city's calendar? And again, back to keeping it transparent and publicly accessible.
Did staff have any other ideas besides that one Thursday?
That was our initial recommendation, and but we're open to other nights. I mean, we can check the city's calendar and find an ideal one.
Commissioner Buckner?
Maybe one way to resolve it is for me to go off design review, and then you could point somebody else to design review, and then you would always have two people at least as on design review, even if, I mean, I don't know, maybe that's the easiest thing to do. It's probably maybe 3 or 4 items when I would have to be recused. I don't know how else to say it, but because Rogerio's the one that has more conflict going on than I do, but it makes it easier maybe for me to just go off and appoint somebody else. That's up to you, Adam.
With the fear of sounding arrogant here, so James Mills listening, don't quote me on that one, but I will say I'm pretty confident in who I appointed to design review, and I would like to keep the design review committee as established. And so Commissioner Buckner, you're going to do what you want to do and what you think is best, and I trust that about you, but personally, I hope that you stay on design review. That's my...
I want to, but if that's the complication, it makes it so difficult for scheduling and everything, maybe that's the...
I would certainly second Sue staying on design review.
I mean, I want to, but I don't know if it's...
Mr. Chair, I have a question about process here, and Lauren, help me out maybe.
Can I just say one thing, Eric, John, before you go in? I don't know how many, you said there's about 21 projects, Brian, that are involved with the billboard issues. How, they're not all coming up all right away. It's going to be over a period of years, right?
Yep.
It will be over a period of years. However, this is an ongoing process. This is not the only set of projects that we'll see. In fact, there are 9 other proposals under review at the moment. It's anticipated we have another round coming up in 2021. There's likely that we will have amendments to the policy that guides this in the interim. So there is a lot of work for a committee, and it's not just, we're not talking about many, many years. There's going to be a lot of projects that come up in the next 2 years, 24 months for sure.
So I have
Commissioner Erickson, and then I'll come to you, Commissioner Ubengarner. I had already called on him.
Thanks. I just wanted to ask a process question. So essentially, we are being asked right now to make an official motion to appoint a new subcommittee per staff's recommendation. Correct, Lauren? Or Brian?
Yeah, that is the recommendation.
So I'm going to make that motion. I've heard my commissioners. I believe that although I would like to wait, I think this is the best process that staff has laid forward. So I will move that recommendation and let that fall where it be, so we can actually have some conversations around decisions versus just conversation for conversation's sake.
I would second that.
And then Commissioner Hoopengarner, you had something else?
No, it's all right. I was just a thought that we could, we do have the one project that technically is on our calendar in the next meeting of the next design review hearing. Is it possible, council, for this body to appoint a temporary substitute for the one time to get that thing done? And then per Adam's suggestion, you know, things are going to change potentially in the next 30 days. And if they do change, revisit this subject for a more permanent solution.
But it's certainly possible. As you know, we've been trying to avoid having alternates coming into the commission. So you could also hear it with, wait, is Commissioner Buckner recused on that one?
You'd have to recuse.
So the very first one is a situation where we only have one.
By the way, that's the only billboard that's even near me.
Yeah, and that's just it. It's a pretty, in my estimation, it's a one-off situation.
Yeah, there aren't even very many near my location. There's one billboard. It's on the corner there.
And so if we could come to an agreement perhaps to have a substitute for that one hearing, then wait until after the election to see what, if anything, changes. If nothing changes, revisit this for a more permanent solution.
Let me just say something. The first item, 11A, is just to establish a committee. The second one is actually the appointments to the committee, and we don't even know who on the commission is able to serve on what dates and so on, according to what their work and their time commitment. So let's take one step at a time. We have a motion on the floor and a second. So why don't we establish the committee and then move on and see what happens?
Commissioner Buckner's clearly shared this meeting before, so let's move forward. We do have a motion in a second, so let's move forward. I appreciate that, Commissioner Buckner. That I do appreciate you bringing it to a point here. David, could you call the roll on the motion?
Sure. Vice Chair Erickson?
Yes.
Commissioner Jones?
Yes.
Commissioner Hoopengarner?
Sure, why not?
Commissioner Buckner?
Yes.
Chair Bass?
Yes.
And the motion carries 5 ayes, and I'm showing Commissioner Carvalero as recused and Commissioner Elchel recused also. Motion passes.
Great. So moving on to 11B, which is an appointment of members and establishing a meeting schedule. My understanding from our previous conversation is that we're not going to be able to establish a schedule tonight because of the city calendar and maybe I'm misspeaking, but I agree with Commissioner Hoopengarner, having served on long range since I joined this commission, that having a time certain that we have to end a design review type of meeting because we're going to start a planning commission meeting really does the community a disservice. So I'm seeing Commissioner Jones shake her head as well. But so I think we need to find a different date than what's been suggested. So I don't think we're going to be able to establish that tonight. Anyone disagree with that?
Nope.
Commissioner Buckner?
No, but since I have to recuse from the next design review, perhaps we could get somebody else who could go to design review on that Thursday for the billboard that's, I think it's 8743 or something like that.
Well, but the idea is that that would be going to this new body.
Yeah, if we have one. Okay.
Well, we've established the body, we just don't have bodies for the body.
Going off of Who would like to be the bodies on the body? And we can maybe talk up, maybe Chair, could we see?
So there are literally only 4 of us who could serve. And so it would be my intention, and let me just bring this all to a close, I hope, it would be my intention to appoint Commissioner Hoopengarner to continue to serve as chair of design review efforts for our city of this new committee. And Commissioner Jones and myself would join that billboard design review subcommittee. That would be my intention. And then to direct staff to work with the 3 of us who've just been appointed, unless any one of them refuse, work with us to figure out what's going to work for a schedule.
Do you need a motion for that, Chair? Because I'm happy to make that a motion.
It says I'm going to appoint, so I don't know about process.
Then we're good. as long as Lynn and Stacy don't say no, I think you're okay.
As long as there's consensus with that and no one's objecting, we can say it by acclamation, I imagine.
Yes, and then when you come up with a regular meeting date, we could report it under our subcommittee management item at the next Planning Commission meeting.
So no objections to that? Commissioner Jones, you're fine serving on that? Okay.
I work in advertising, so I actually would prefer to be on it. So yes, that sounds great. Thank you. But just to be clear, we will be working with staff to determine an appropriate date for these meetings, correct? Okay. I just don't want to do it before PC, but that's my only request.
And, if, making sure that the UDazzlers are part of this process.
Right. I think that wraps up that item, which takes us to unfinished business, item 12, which there's none. There's no excluded consent calendar. Items from staff, number 14.
Give an update on the upcoming Planning Commission meetings. So we've got on November 5th, which is our next meeting, we will have 8743 Sunset, which was just continued this evening. We'll have 1006 Hancock, which is just a subdivision, a condo subdivision. We're going to hear a zone text amendment that was previously at long range subcommittee on alcohol service in R3CC and R4BC zones, which are our commercial residential zones. And we're going to hear an update on SB 743, which is the VMT, vehicle miles traveled thresholds for CEQA review. So that's going to be a full meeting, so I hope everybody can make it. On November 19th, we will have the Palm Avenue Senior Congregate Care, which was just continued this evening, as well as a subdivision and a zone text amendment regarding density bonus to bring us in line with new state legislation. And then other than that, I just wanted to, Commissioner Hoopengarner mentioned a request to include UDAS in the early on in our review of projects. And I just wanted to let everyone know that Rick and his team are involved from the very beginning. They're involved before the project comes in, often meet with the applicants at least once, multiple times, also gives formal comments right after the project comes in and is really with it the whole way. So rest assured that's happening. And I don't know, I can cover subcommittees right now, or we can wait till the official item. It's up to you.
Let's just do it while
while I'm rolling. Okay, so on October 22nd, we're going to hear 2 items at subcommittee, design review subcommittee. The 1238 Formosa is a 17-unit apartment building, and 1032 Ogden is a 14-unit apartment building. Both of those are just all residential. And then on the next long-range subcommittee is November 19th. A West Hollywood West design guideline update will be coming to you, as well as a zone text amendment about hotels, hotels adding rooftop additions, alcohol service and restaurant services to non-guests for our hotels that are in the residential zoning districts. So that's going to be an interesting discussion. Those are the 2 things on subcommittee. And I don't believe, in fact, I know neither of the items on design review subcommittee have gone before, so there shouldn't be any issue with with multiple commissioners having heard it before. Thank you.
Since Jennifer brought up the subcommittee management, does any commissioner have anything to say on not being able to attend meetings, anything like that? Okay.
Not like we can go anywhere.
Then we will move on to public comment, item number 15. David, has anyone stuck around with us long enough to
Yes, yes, we do. We
Great.
actually have one public speaker, Victor Omolchenko. Victor, you have 3 minutes to speak. Victor, you want to try your star? What is it, Commissioner Erickson? Is star 6?
It was star
Okay,
6.
can you hear me now? Sorry,
Okay.
this is Victor Omolchenko. Can everyone hear me?
Yes, Victor, go ahead.
Oh, very good. Thank you so much. Victor Omolchenko. I'm a longtime West Hollywood resident speaking on behalf of the West Hollywood Preservation Alliance to thank you, commissioners. Thank you so much for continuing the hearing on the Palm Avenue project. Out of respect for the passing of the neighborhood leader in that area, Duff Bennett. And so it's good to know that you listened and that you approved that continuance. I know you've just talked a lot about process, so I'm into process too. So let me let you know that on October 1st was the first time I saw a public notice on the city's website given for the Palm Avenue project. And so many of us also still rely on the written word paper copy, and we rely on the Beverly Press, which is published with the Thursday edition of the LA Times and also available around the city. I did not see any public hearing announcement on this very large and complicated Palm Avenue project in the October 1 Beverly Press or the October 8th Beverly Press, nor when I visited Plummer Park, did I see any public notice about this meeting? And I think we're supposed to put up notices in Plummer Park. So as a suggestion going forward, since we've been talking about government transparency and efficiency, I know and I trust that the city will put in maybe a public hearing announcement in the Beverly Press for the Palm Avenue project, either on November 5th or November 12th. That's a suggestion that I have. Many of us rely in these times still on the written word. As for 8743 Sunset, which you continued tonight, I noticed that under item 10A, it mentions that this is in order to provide time for staff and the applicant to finalize the details of the project. I just wanted you to know that the Historic Preservation Commission did consider this particular billboard project, this conversion to digital, back on August 24th in August. So I trust that as the staff and the applicant finalize the details that will be presented to you, any of these new finalized details that are being finalized will also be made available to the Historic Preservation Commissioners, which have already passed on the project. So thank you for that consideration. And I look forward to reviewing Rick Abramson's urban design information session. My system was going in and out the TV and I was having some difficulty accessing this. But whenever I hear about state law, it sounds like, oh, we can't do anything here in the localities. And I just want to bring up quickly that aesthetics was removed from consideration in projects when there are EIRs, if there's a project in a transit zone. And I'm very wary of other aspects of our lives, cultural resources, demographics, biological resources, quietly being removed by Sacramento while we are here sitting in the locality and just being told, now you must follow this new density state rule. And I would just ask our long range committee or whatever subcommittee looks at this Could we have more active involvement in commenting on all these myriad, for instance, as Rick mentioned, housing laws? Where do municipalities and our planning commission, you commissioners, fit into this process? So thanks for listening to me. Thanks for being there. And thanks for really furthering government transparency and involvement. And I'll be sending an email in just with some suggestions about how the system is accessed now, or the experience that I had in accessing this particular very important meeting. And yes, we must all vote. So good night, commissioners.
Thank you very much, Mr. Omolchenko. Last item on our agenda is items from commissioners. So Commissioner Buckner, you're on mute again.
Sorry, just vote, vote, vote. That's all I can say. And everybody stay well. Thank you, everybody, for your participation. Appreciate it.
And we hope you feel better as well. Commissioner Jones?
Nothing at this time.
Commissioner Hoopengarner?
Just one question for staff. This is kind of not officially in our purview, but I'm curious. It's been brought to my attention that we have some RDA money, about $9 million earmarked for Plummer Park. And council and staff were to convene a steering committee. And I wondered where that stands and when the deadline is for using that money.
I don't know the answer to that, but I can get it for you unless Brian knows more than I do. No, we can get you an update on that, Commissioner.
That's a lot of money to lose just because of a pandemic, just a little pandemic.
We'll look into it.
Thank you. Vice Chair Erickson?
Nothing here.
I want to thank you all for getting through this meeting and moving forward a couple of big items there. Thank you to staff for the great presentation on the design studio tonight. And also just to make sure my comments were clear, when I brought up the fact that there is an election, certainly not electioneering for or against anyone, just wanted to put it in context of this commission serves at the will of the council. And so, once a new council is seated, this commission could look different. I wanted to make sure my comments were in context of my intentions. So with that, if there are no other comments, I will adjourn this meeting to our next scheduled meeting, most likely the same format at 6:30 p.m. On November 5th. And again, urge everyone to vote. Have a good night.
Thank you. Good night.
Thank you. Good night. Feel better, Sue.